Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report. Today it's Wednesday, December 12th, 2012. And the first article I have for you is Surge in Immolations, that's people setting themselves on fire, by Tibetans, marks a new phase in protests against China as 24 Tibetans have set themselves on fire in western China this month in a dramatic acceleration of the protests against Chinese rule. Goes on here, says at least 86 people have set themselves on fire since the immolations began in 2009. 86. It says in a change in recent months, most self-immolators now are lay people. Some of them are acting together rather than Buddhist monks and nuns who live in tightly monitored monasteries and thus can be more closely watched by authorities. Police in China detain monk, accuse him of inciting self-immolations among Tibetans. The police detained a monk and his nephew in China's Sichuan province and accused them of instigating the self-immolations of 8 ethnic Tibetans on the instructions of the Dalai Lama. So I don't really know what to make of that, the whole Tibetan and Dalai Lama thing. I mean, yeah, it's messed up and stuff like that, but I don't know if it's co-opted and it's another psyop. To create instability in China. We have from the 9th police clash with thousands of rioters in South China City. Bordering Vietnam, they clashed with thousands of rioters who were protesting excessive brutality. And although 5 policemen were lightly injured, it says here in anti-smuggling vehicles damaged, it says during the incident the police did not adopt overly violent behavior. So it's interesting. It says the rioting erupted after locals on a busy street saw motorcycles being treated brusquely by anti-smuggling police after crashing their vehicle into them. So some people in the crowd thought the motorcyclist was dead and they refused to let the police vehicles leave, began overturning and torching the police cars. It says up to 100 people were killed or injured during the clashes. Vietnam breaks up anti-China protests from the 9th again. It says rare protests have taken place in Vietnam over maritime territorial disputes with neighboring China. So it's kind of like with Japan. It seems like Western type provoked protest. Vietnam is unhappy with the map of the new Chinese passport that shows disputed areas of South China as a Chinese territory. So this is the original title was a real toy story for Christmas inside China's Grueling toy factories. Every day the worker has to arrive 15 minutes before the regular work shift begins for a work assembly. So I'd like to be in that line. It says here, next up, the living conditions are prison-like with up to 6 people sharing small, cramped dormitories and up to 50 people sharing one bathroom. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can check this out. The links will be posted. I'll just kind of go through here. It says that some factories promise workers a 10-minute break after every 2 hours of work. And there they go. Kind of happy workers. During a 30-minute lunch period, the workers return to the shop floor early to resume production or to attend another meeting, which they are not paid for. It says workers endure long hours, 6 to 7 days per week. And I didn't know this, but man, I didn't know that's how they did it with just by hand, like nail polish and all these chemicals. You can see the paint there. I mean, you can tell that this is they're really around some pretty toxic stuff there that they're handling. I mean, they're for sure going to get some good cancers or something like that, or tumors. But hey, they got work, right? They got jobs. So here's some more happy workers. And it says, I was just talking about, this results in alarmingly high levels of occupational disease and work-related injuries. In 2009 alone, approximately 1 million workers were injured at work, and about 20,000 suffered from disease due to their occupation or their job. Injured workers report that factory management does not show interest in their workers' well-being. I guess that's them taking a nap under the little work table. Look at that, there's Mickey Mouse. It says by age 30, female migrants are considered too old for factory work and are discharged. So there's many reasons for getting people in these mega cities. They're easier to control and stuff like that. And this is where a lot of the this kind of slave labor goes on. So, you think about the United States, how did they needed to get people in the north into these cities to start working in these factories for the Industrial Revolution. Of course, the Dust Bowl and people not having work helped. Of course, that was caused by what? The government's policies. I said, how did it get like this? Before opening up its economy in the late 70s, which was done by who? By Nixon and Kissinger's. The globalists, the Chinese government issued tight control between rural and urban areas, which encouraged people to migrate to cities illegally. It also says, according to this war on want, these controls were part of a permit accuse system in which welfare entitlements such as pensions, housing, health, education were tied to a person's place of birth. But as China moved towards a market economy, cheap rural labor became integral to the country's growth. So it sounds familiar. The limitations on migration were reduced, and around 85% of China's rural poor flocked to the cities in search of a good wage slave job. Migrant workers became unable to access state benefits or protection despite Chinese laws promising equal rights for all. They became outcasts in the eyes of their government, and that's approximately 150 million workers who are utterly unprotected. They endured all these working conditions, such as excessive and forced overtime, and don't get the basic Social Security benefits. It says the workers' lack of awareness of their own rights and Chinese government's unwillingness to address, of course, the abuse only perpetuate the system. So, most people, just like our ancestors here in America, wherever they may be, from Africa or from Europe or wherever, they're used to being slaves. They're used to being peasants. It's a mentality. So, this has been going on for a long time. Multinational corporations and national factory owners take advantage of the anti-union climate. It's interesting, though, because, with the whole Industrial Revolution, they had the same type conditions here. And because ultimately they want to have it become totally automated. They need people to run the machines or do stuff like this and, risky jobs and stuff like that. And so back then in the United States, it was actually a benefit. It was a good thing to try to get these unions to protect themselves from these, as they called them, monopolists and stuff. They're taking advantage of desperate people. Of course, since then, we've come to see that unions have really become a big, just a big fraud that eventually end up working against the workers. So what do we have in Michigan? Jimmy Hoffa warns of civil war as Michigan governor signs right to work into law. So it says, the Teamsters head Jimmy Hoffa appeared on CNN saying this is just the first round of a battle that's going to divide the state. We're going to have a civil war. The Michigan Governor Snyder signs ban on mandatory union dues, which are completely inflated, like I said. Who knows? We'll see, right? Someone said looked for a lot of investment to be flowing into Michigan now. 35,000 rubber ducks and Santa reindeer outfits seized at LA airport. It says the 35,000 holiday-themed rubber ducks from China were detained by U.S. Customs officials. They said right here they were contained chemical phthalates in excess of the limit, which may be harmful to children. Said, imagine if you're making those things. So what is the solution here? To decentralize big retail businesses, how to uproot Walmart and bring jobs back home. It says in many towns across America, Walmart or similar mega retailers is the only option you have when you need almost anything. These big retailers is a monopoly, and its truest form has become so not through free market economics, they call it free trade, technological innovation, supply and demand, or healthy competition, but rather through a combination of pro-monopoly rules and regulations, human exploitation, outsourcing labor overseas, while preventing labor domestically from unionizing for better wages, job security, and benefits. Subpar trinkets, poisoned food and beverages, and slave-made goods that line the corporate consumer troughs at Walmart are the result of global network taking advantage of the socio-economic disparity, consumer ignorance, and deplorable labor conditions to bring the very lowest prices possible to consumers. They may not realize that the polo shirts that they are buying at Walmart come from an overcrowded, deplorable factory in Bangladesh where a fire recently claimed the lives of 112 workers. But, they say the average Walmart customer has no idea it existed because it's the rest of the price is out of sight, out of mind. It's like I said before, though, when you start seeing people not being able to go to Walmart anymore, that's when you should expect economic instability and civil unrest, because that's what's actually propping up a lot of the people's standards of living. It's it's built off. It's a false, it's illusion basically, because people are losing their actual wealth. And like I said before, I made this comparison, this irony of in China, all those people are working to get a better. They're trying to live like Americans, so they're going to work and slave away, producing these cheap products. To be more like Americans, and then at the same time, where Americans are losing their standard of living, they're becoming now going to be exploited like the Chinese are, because they're desperate workers, but they're going to buy all this cheap crap to maintain their standard of living. So it's totally interdependent. We have the waste of resources, wealth disparity, and human rights abuses of big retailers. These sweatshops, Walmart has outsourced U.S. jobs to third world sweatshops where people work under dangerous, deplorable conditions, so a handful of executives and shareholders can maximize their profits. It says here, port employers can't outsource jobs overseas, but they can offer jobs to people willing to work for little or no benefits, minimum wage, and no prospect for retirement, and no respect. You have the foreign sweatshops. Number one, the port or warehouse. Trucks and ships burn fuel and expend resources to transport goods that should be made locally. Number three, you have a factory farm. And number four, you have the retail giant. Like I said, just wait until this turns into a big FEMA camp. Walmart itself prevents workers from organizing unions to bargain for better wages and benefits. Again, so the vast wealth accumulated by Walmart ends up in as few hands as possible. As far as the solution, they say activism isn't enough. It's important to educate people as to real costs of their always low prices. It says it was innovative uses of new technology that eventually began the decentralizing of media monopolies, and it will be innovative uses of new technology that likewise will begin the decentralizing of big retail. Imagine a city or several blocks all within walking distance where you can obtain everything you need, produced and made available locally. So the whole thing with having machines and stuff like to help you, or autonomous machines in factories, it doesn't have to necessarily be evil. The evil thing is that you're a wage slave and you're dependent on an employer who's under this capitalist system. It'll never be enough, no matter how big. It's like they have to grow, because if they're not growing, they're dying. That's the way they see it. The only way they can grow is by treating their workers like crap and gobbling up all the competition. So if we were really free, if we were in a free society and a free market, really individuals should be working for themselves. Most people should be working for themselves. They should be their own employers. University uses Tesla technology to wirelessly charge electric bus. It's the first of its kind. My only thing with this, though, is, everybody says how great Tesla was. We're talking about wireless power. These are frequencies that are going through your body, and we already have enough of it right now. This Wi-Fi fog, as they call it, or smog. Electrical device plugs directly into trees for power. They've discovered that there's enough power in living trees to run an electric circuit. Remember the infamous quote by whoever it was, one of those bankers, to Tesla, saying that, unless you can put a meter on it, we really don't want people to have free electricities to be independent. So that's what I was talking about. It could be good for people to be independent and work for themselves and not need these monopolies. And these Walmarts, they're one of the richest families in the world, Walmart. World's most prestigious financial agency, called the central bank, warns of bursting bubble. According to the Bank of International Settlements' latest quarterly review, financial markets are starting to behave in some of the ways that they behaved before the crash in 2008. They actually slammed the Federal Reserve's policy, which is what? Federal Reserve seen pumping up assets to $4 trillion in new buying. They said they're going to announce $45 billion in a monthly Treasury buying that will push its balance sheet to almost $4 trillion. That's why Mr. Bernanke is smiling. Obama declares big banks too big to jail. Decision not to prosecute banks' money laundering sparks outrage from HSBC, which funneled cash to the Mexican drug cartels and Saudi banks with ties to al-Qaeda. This is as the U.S. is the world's largest prison state, imprisoning more of its citizens than any nation on earth, yet they're going to avoid being criminally prosecuted. There's 15 signs that the economy is rapidly getting worse as we head into 2013. Go in there and check it out. Links will be posted. Youth unemployment is the highest it's ever been in the U.S. since World War II. Says 40% of all Americans have $500 or less in savings. But besides Wall Street bankers are expecting a worse bonus season, food banks all over America, like the UK, are reporting more needy families need food than ever before. Remember that clip of Obama supporters saying Obama's going to pay my phone bills? The California Public Utilities Commission is expected to approve a plan to offer homeless and other poor people in California virtually free cell phones and service. That's, of course, to track and monitor them. The Doha summit fails. Only 37 countries agree to extend the Kyoto Treaty. While police arrest suspected carbon credit fraud ring, they said that they exploited people's misguided belief about climate change. And And another city removes fluoride from their water. Thank you.